Everyone, welcome to episode number 15. Yeah, we're up to 15 of the Livin The Dream podcast here from the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. I am Rishi Barran. I've been there since just about the start of the program, and so has my guest today, the one and only Melvin Jones, a guy that I have really enjoyed interacting with, not only during his time in our program, but since then, seeing all the success that he's done down and all the great moments he's had down in San Antonio, Texas. Melvin is a play-by-play broadcaster and a producer for Vype Media, and Vype Live is where you'll find a lot of his content. Melvin, what's happening today?
You know, Rishi, it's been really busy here. Football's winding down, volleyball playoffs about to start. So I have been extremely busy, but I am so happy to be on this podcast with you.
Very happy to have you on, Melvin. Melvin was a member of our first online graduating class, set a high bar for everyone to reach since then. And you may see some of his work throughout your time going through the program in examples. And we'll get into that. We'll get into a little bit of his background before he got into play-by-play broadcasting that he's doing now. And Melvin has lived quite the life, I'll tell you, and set himself up for a dream job he has right now. And we'll talk about how he got there. But why don't we start way back at the very start? Young Melvin Jones, super young Melvin Jones. Where did this dream of becoming a sportscaster and a broadcaster come from, Melvin?
It's funny. And this is probably the earliest memory that I have as a child. It was April of 1985. And it was the boxing match between Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns that happened in Vegas, born and raised in Vegas. So at that time, boxing was our sports. We didn't have any pro sports at the time, so boxing was it. And I was 3 at the time, and I remember vividly hearing Al Michaels call that fight. And at the time, this was when Al Michaels was doing everything for ABC, from boxing to football. He did some baseball, a little bit of everything. And at that point, that's when I not only fell in love with boxing, but I fell in love with sportscasting as far as my earliest memory. Now, my father has this tale that I started reading at the age of 2, and I was reading the TV Guide at the age of 2. But as far as my memory, that's where it began. And forever, this is all I wanted to do, was become a sportscaster one way or another. Now, I went through different avenues and trying to get here, but nonetheless, I'm here now, and I'm so excited to be doing this now at the age of 40, doing my dream at the age of 40 that a lot of people can't say that they've done.
Yeah, and to never let that dream go too, right? So you've had many different avenues to get you on this path, which we will explore during the course of this next hour or so. But you never gave up on that. And that enthusiasm you have for sports, Melvin, I could feel it from the first time I ever spoke with you. It was before I even had class with you. You used to come in on some of our events that we had, seminars, IL sessions, things like that. And that smile, that passion in your voice, that enthusiasm, that's something that I think makes people who watch you and listen to you get into the sporting events even more. Did you have any sports heroes growing up, not only from a playing standpoint, but also from a broadcasting standpoint?
The broadcasting one is particularly easy because these are the ones that I followed through the most. And once again, I start with Al Michaels. He was the first voice I remember, and still to this day, I believe Al is the best at his craft and what he does. Brent Musburger, who at the time was calling college basketball for CBS, and he was the host of the Final Four for years before he went on to ABC and ESPN. So Brent was another one that I absolutely adored. I'm a West Coast dude, and as much as I cannot stand the team, Chick Hearn was the epitome, the top of the line as far as broadcast basketball voices that you could get. Longtime voice of the Lakers. And he was it. He was that dude for the West Coast, and he was the basketball version of Vince Scully. And I don't think anyone could argue that. And I would say Jim Lampley, of course, the voice of boxing for my childhood, voice of HBO boxing. He was the one that storytelling became a primary fixture in regards to his telecast. And you look back at some of his great calls, and it all revolved around storytelling. And so those are the five I could, think of the top of my head. Stuart Scott, of course, is up in there, but those are the ones that I really, really followed through and wanted to hone my craft after.
You bring up a lot of memories for me too, hearing those names. And we grew up in a little bit different era of broadcasting before technology took over, when it was a little bit more network based and a little less digital based. And you brought up Al Michaels and ABC, and the wide world of sports was a big thing at a time. I know now you're covering a lot of different types of sports for play-by-play. How did watching sports in that era influence you in terms of variety with sports?
Well, you got to think about it. Back when we were kids, per se, Wide World of Sports, CBS Sports Saturdays were the two programs that ventured off of NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. Those sports were not covered on those programs. So you got to see a lot of the different other programs, bowling, boxing, like I said before, track and field. So watching those programs and getting in the field and falling in love with those sports made me want to say, hey, I could do just more outside of the scope of football, basketball, and baseball. There's other sports out there that if you find your niche, you'll fall in love with it quickly and it'll become, second nature to you. So yeah, those programs in particular, the Wide World of Sports and the CBS Sports Saturdays, and NBC Sports Worlds, those were the programs that on Saturdays and Sundays were the programs to watch.
Melvin is also our first, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you won this, our first Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting sports trivia champion. Am I correct?
You are correct, sir.
All right. So something we try to emphasize to our students now is how important it is to really research and study what's going on in the world of sports and to be up to date, not only on current events, but events in the past that might impact what you're watching in current days. And clearly you knew a few things if you were going to win that championship, because some of those questions were not easy. So I ask you, how critical do you feel it is to have that broad base going into any broadcast you do?
I believe in having knowledge of whatever sport that you do is key to having a successful sportscast. Historical aspects, knowing key figures and knowing the key events that happen in a lot of those sports, those is what make a successful sportscast. I'm going to use an example. I had never done volleyball in my life until 2 years ago when I came to Vype. And in about a 2-week time period, I watched so much volleyball and got caught up with so much volleyball that I knew certain players, knew certain terminology that I wouldn't have known had I just went back and just take a look at certain things, following up and watching like Karch Karai and other players in the volleyball world. You get the sense of if you know what you're talking about, your listeners and your viewers will see you as that you're knowledgeable and that what you're saying is the gospel. And so I've always had that mindset of knowing a little bit of I try to know a little bit of everything for every sport outside of cricket, because I absolutely do not understand it. That's the one sport that I don't understand. But if you are knowledgeable in your call and you're confident in your call, it will come through on air, and who's ever viewing you, who's ever watching you, they would appreciate you because you actually have that knowledge into knowing what you're talking about. And that's with any sport. And me being so depth, I got, to know more about sports broadcasting history. I got deep into that. So if you know your history of your sports and the stuff that you're calling and some of the key events, the viewers and the listeners, they would definitely appreciate you.
Arvidsson delivers. Strike three. Brandon Arvidsson has thrown a no-hitter. 11 strikeouts for Brandon Narveson, a no-hitter, and the Tigers win their first district game.
We're talking to Melvin Jones, play-by-play broadcaster and producer for Vype Media in San Antonio, Texas. Melvin, you mentioned very young, 2 years old, you're reading. And then
supposedly.
Supposedly. And then you had this dream of being a sportscaster. But it really took you until close to your 40th birthday till you actually met your true goal of that. One doesn't need to look too far to LinkedIn to find the variety of different types of interesting jobs that you have held over the course of your career. Everything from working at a local TV station and being in master control and being a photojournalist, as it be, a photographer, a videographer, to shooting for places like the Bellagio and the Venetian in Las Vegas, and also some time in the military. So let's kind of rewind for a minute here. You had this dream, and then all this stuff happens before you become a broadcaster. How did those experiences shape you on that path?
What's crazy, Rishi, is I started working in television productions when I was, 15, 16 years old, just doing different internships at the local PBS out in Las Vegas. Our school was equipped to where you can get a vocational certificate in the field that you were in. Mine was television productions. So I started off that at a very, very young age. And then from there, I moved on. That's when I moved on to the Venetian and the Bellagio, shooting weddings, special
How old were
events.
you when you did that?
I started working at the Venetian when I was 18. So I had just graduated high school. So, and the Venetian had just opened a year prior to. So this is 2000. And I left the Venetian, went to the Bellagio shooting weddings. And at that point, I'm still not even 21 at this point. I'm 20 when I started working at the Bellagio. So working under the age of 21 at a casino, which is crazy if you think about it, in the state of Nevada, where gambling is king. And I'm working in at that time, two brand new mega resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. And I'm there before the age of 21. So that helped me out because I got to see the behind the scenes more look, and I got to know how to shoot properly, being at those two places. And then when I went to KRNV, that was by pure accident. And I say that because I was up there to go to the University of Nevada, Reno, to major in journalism and everything else. I happened to get hired, and I started KRNV as a mass control operator on October 20th, 2003. So here we are, a little over 19 years after that fact that I've done that. And then I went back to Vegas, worked mass control some more, worked in the studio as well. So I was studio cam operator. And then I went into the military. I did 4 years, first with the Navy Reserve, and then I went full active duty with the Army. Got out of the military, came back to my old station, started shooting news. And I did that for about 4.5, 5 years before I wound up here working in the Department of the Army, working still in television productions, but doing a lot of behind the scenes. And I did radio as well. I did traffic announcing for CBS radio as well, in between all of that. So all of that set me up and gave me the confidence to not only be able to go on air, because I've been around people who, go on air for a living, but it gave me the training to actually be prepared for when I started this program, that I had the confidence to know that I could go out and I could shoot a VOSI, or I could put together a VO. I could write and edit my own packages when we were doing it. So all of that set me up for not only now, but when I started the program.
A lot of people who come into our program don't have that kind of experience, like that they don't know how to shoot and edit the way that you did. What kind of advantages do you think that gave you, having that prior knowledge, in terms of maybe being able to focus more deeply on some of the performance aspects? Did that help you?
It did. But and I would tell this to anyone who's coming through the program, whose goal is to go work at a local news station. every station has its different way of shooting. Every station has a different way on how they want you to write certain stories. It just depends. But for me, because I already had knowledge into knowing how to write a package, knowing how to write a VO, VOSOP, whatever the case may be, I think just having that experience when I came into the program, it gave me an extra leg up. Now, at the same token, and it was you, when you was like, hey, that's cool that you know how to do this, but do it this way. And I was like, oh, okay. And so at that point, that made me realize, hey, not every way that I've done, because I've only been to 2 different markets working in television news, but not every way that I've learned is the same way everywhere. And there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and there's every other way to do it. So that made me say, okay, I need to perfect my skills, whichever way the wind blows. So it all depends.
Yeah. And I give you a lot of credit for being open-minded with trying new stuff, right? You already knew some stuff, but you were willing to take feedback and attempt to do things to make your work better and better. Now, you
not
mentioned
only that, I don't mean to cut you off, but not only
good.
that, Rishi, but when I've had a lot of experience, close to 20 years experience working in television news, but that's on the production side.
Yeah.
So just because I've had that experience on the production side does not mean that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to writing all the time, because I didn't do it every day. I shot every day, but I didn't write every day. And you were the one to say, hey, this is the proper way into doing it. And I understood that and I grasped that. And so I never came in with the ego that I knew everything about everything, but I'm glad that you were the one to set me up for success.
Well, you certainly took that and ran with it. How'd you find out about us?
I was already attending Full Sail.
I did not know that.
I was attending Full Sail to go into the digital cinematography program.
Huh.
This was back in I want to say late 2017. Because the program didn't get announced until, if I'm not mistaken, October of 2017. So I believe we just marked the 5-year anniversary of the program.
Yep.
So I'm 3 classes in. I'm about to start my 4 classes with the digital cinematography. So then I called my student advisor. I was like, yo, I need to get into this program because this is the program I've always wanted to be in. I've always wanted to have my degree in sportscasting. So I need to get into this program. And so it took a lot of, it wasn't a lot of fight, but I knew I would be set back a little bit because of a lot of the classes that I've already taken didn't transfer over. And I was okay with that because I got to do exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And I remember when I first had you, you weren't in the first class that came through for me, online class, but you caught up because of the credits you had. So you ended up graduating with that first class. And I'm glad that you came over to us because, as you said, I feel like it really was tailor-made for what you were trying to do. Now, as I mentioned, you got involved in a lot of the extracurricular activities that we offer to online students. You don't have to be on campus to be part of some of these seminars that we do. And one of the things we did were those play-by-play seminars. And I think you might have had to work at the time with some of them, and you still found a way to be there, if I remember correctly. How did those extra activities and putting yourself out there and just kind of signing up, how did that help you get better than just the classwork?
Hands-on to me is always the best method into learning. And me joining a lot of those seminars, and I believe the first seminar we had was doing play-by-play about soccer. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it was. And it was still fascinating to me to get all of this wealth of knowledge about how to do play-by-play, how to prep, how to seek out the people you need to talk to in regards to having a proper pregame. Those things like that helped me tremendously. Because trust me, those first couple of broadcasts that I had after graduation, I stumbled, and I stumbled a lot until I remember my training. And I remember those seminars that we had. And once I remember that, then it started to take off just a little bit. Because I wanted to do a little bit too much. I'm my biggest critic. And I try to do too much in those first couple of broadcasts. But going back and to watching those seminars, because I still had those seminars ready to go. And I talked to you, and I believe I talked to Gus as well around that time. I understood what I was doing wrong. And those seminars helped tremendously. And I would recommend anyone who wants to do play-by-play, attend every play-by-play seminar that the school offers, that you offer, because guess what? It's going to help you. It's going to help you out a lot.
Lewin fires, completes. Logan Ayers, Nate Griffin to the 10, to the 5, touchdown, S-A-C, Nate Griffin.
Nico hits it high, Nico hits it far. Nico Redis has himself a 2-run home run, and the Tigers lead 6-1.
Yeah, and by the way, we now have those in kind of a tighter on-demand feature, which is just YouTube links. So I'll send those to you too, just in case you ever want to refer back to them if you ever need them. I'm sure at this point you probably don't, but they're available to all Full Sail students. So
I would still love to have them, because I would love to see, okay, maybe I'm doing XYZ wrong. Where should I need to improve on? I'm always looking to improve in my craft. And even to this day, I'm catching myself doing something that I will go back to listen to my broadcast and said, okay, I need to eliminate that. So I'm always willing to learn and get better at my craft, because this is what we do.
So you got into our program, you excelled from the start. I remember I heard some good things about you from Jeff Schetzel to begin with, and then I had you in my class, and you were just, again, your positivity, your willingness to learn, your ability to be open, and not only for yourself, but to help your classmates. What was the experience like being in the program when it was so new?
It was different, but it was the most exciting time, because I was excited to say I was finally doing what I wanted to do. But it was weird because it was all online. I mean, we had literally, I believe we started off with 16 people, and it dropped down to 6 within 2 months. And those 6 people were the ones that graduated with me. And we went through that entire program together. So it was difficult, man. I'm not gonna sit up here and lie and say it was easy. It was difficult, but it was a boot camp. It was a sportscasting boot camp, if there was ever one, for 2.5 years, and we did it. So it was difficult. It was hard because we didn't have the hands-on experience like the campus students had. We had to do everything on our own, with our lunchbox, and go out and shoot our own stories by ourselves. So it was definitely difficult, but I would not change that for the world. There's no way I could, and kudos to the campus students, there's no way I could have changed my mind into doing it online, because it made us better.
And those reps and that experience did make you who you are. And it certainly, as you mentioned, it takes someone who's really self-directed, I think, and has that self-discipline to succeed in the online program. But it worked for you, right? And you did it with a full-time job and with a family. There's a lot of online students in that same boat. What advice do you have for them for managing the work in spite of having so much else going on?
Manage your time better. I said the one thing that you can do is, if you have a full-time job, dedicate yourself to that full-time job, but then also understand that if this is what you want to do it. Take the time and effort to make sure that your projects are all good. Everything that you learn in project and portfolio in all 7 classes, take that to heart. Because understand that everything that you learn in project and portfolio is everything that you're going to do in the outside world. So take those to the heart, especially those classes alone. Those are the classes you really need to hone your skills on. And if you need help, reach out. I had a family a huge family at that. And at the time, I had a family. I was going through some personal problems, going through a divorce at the time, still working, still going to school. And I made sure, oh, and by the way, the last 4 months of our program, we got hit with COVID. So
Yeah.
we had to, it was brutal, but I always made sure, because this is something that I'm so passionate about. It's something that I wanted to do in my life, that I made sure that and it was many of instances where I'll put school before work, because ultimately I knew this is what I want to do in my life. You know, this is what I want to do for a living. And it's always been said that if you love what you do, it's not work. So, and that's how I took it. So it was not, and I tell this to every online student, trust me, it is not easy. I understand your pain. It is not easy, because we don't have the support of the studio. We don't have the support of others that could go out and help us shoot our stand-ups or help us shoot our packages or whatever. But the amount of learning that you get while online and going out and shooting your own packages, going out and shooting your own stand-ups, it will help you tremendously, especially if you don't go into the news field working as an MMJ. So take it to heart, man. If this is what you want to do, you'll love every bit of it.
You brought up your news background before. I think you can speak better than most on that. Probably even better than me on that, because I think you might have done it even for more years than I did. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages for students who want to start their career, maybe in the local news, with hopes of, okay, that's going to be my first step, trying to get my foot in the door to move on to doing more sports stuff?
Biggest advantage is getting reps. And if you're doing this on a daily basis, getting reps is what you want to do. Now, don't expect to start your career working in New York, Los Angeles, Houston. It's not happening. One of my classmates is working in Montana now. And those are the steps that you need to do if you want to succeed in this field, because you got to crawl before you walk. So working in a small market, to me, that's the best steps into starting this career and making it worthwhile, because you learn your mistakes in a small market before you get to a bigger market, before you go to a mid-sized market, and then before you get to a top 25 market. So go to that small market, make your mistakes in those small markets, and then work your way up. Because news directors are always watching. EPs are always watching. You go to sites like SCAA, there are always sports reporter jobs and anchor jobs around. So when you graduate, make sure you have a good tape to shoot off to these news directors and these executive producers. And trust me, make your mistakes in those small markets, work your way up, and I promise you, you would get to where you are. Now, for me, I have a different story, because I've always said I want to get out of news, but not because of I hate news. It's because I did it for so long, and I dealt with a lot of egos. And you too also deal with egos. That's just part of news. I mean, and anyone who's worked there, from Gus to Rishi to Jeff, anyone who's ever worked in this business, to tell you there are egos in the news business. But you can always, I'm side story, I'm gonna go here. This is about 8 years ago. I'm not even gonna call this person out by name, but I worked with a weekend sports anchor at my old station. And this person tried to berate me inside of an editing booth.
Oh, no.
Telling me that it's her face. I shouldn't say that, but it's it's their face on television, and just try to put me down about my dreams I wanted to do. You would get those people, but you also would get people who will be your right-hand people at the end of the day once you get into the business. Brian Salmon, who is the sports director at KSNV in Vegas, I still can give him a call right now and say I need help. And those are the people that you need to lean on. Those sports directors in bigger markets, those mentors. Rishi is always out there. It's certain people that you can always reach out to who's been in the business that will always have your back and tell you the best way to go on. So don't let anyone deter you from your dreams, because you will deal with egos in news. Trust me. But don't let those individuals deter you for what you want to do.
I think that's helpful. Any aspect of your life, find your people, right? The people who are positive and supportive and who are there to help you and who you can count on. And not everybody's going to be like that. And you're going to have to deal with people who are not like that for sure to survive. But find those people, rely on them, reach out to them. And hopefully our family here at Full Sail, including Melvin and all the people you see on these podcasts, they're all here to help you too. So we've built our network from nobody, right? We built our network from Melvin, who was one of our first graduates. So Melvin and people like that, they're the kind of people that you should lean on moving out. And Melvin found his personal voice, I feel, pretty early on. I remember it in broadcast writing, Melvin. You had some personality back then that you would throw in, but I saw it develop over your time to when you got to the end. It was really strong. How did you go about finding that voice and making it so unique to who you are?
I was always told, this was 25 years ago, that if you want to succeed in this business, be yourself. And that's one thing that I did not learn. I didn't catch on. I learned it, but I didn't catch on until I got into the program. Is I was trying to be someone else and not myself. And I believe that's why I was able to, my voice became stronger, because I became myself. I was being me. I wasn't trying to be a Stuart Scott. I wasn't trying to be a Mark Jones. I wasn't trying to be a Brent Musburger or anything like that. I was being Melvin Jones. Being yourself will take you far, far, far in life. And once again, I didn't grasp that until right around broadcast writing and doing my own stand-ups. I remember it was, I want to say, our final project, and we had to put together our tape. Of course, put together our newscast, and I did a stand-up, live stand-up outside the AT&T Center during COVID, where there is absolutely no one on the streets and no games going on. But I had to make it work. And I found my voice just by taking the reps and being myself. And for anyone that really wants to make this a career, be yourself. That's the best piece of advice that I think I can give anyone. Just be yourself.
You can also learn from how Melvin went to different locations, and he took the time in San Antonio to find the places where it looked professional. And I would urge any of you online students to do the same. Don't just, I always use the term your mother's basement, right? Because that's kind of like the term that's out there. But, don't shoot it in your mother's basement. Go out somewhere. You've got a camera, you got your stuff. I understand there's reasons sometimes when you may not be able to do that. But if you can do it, get out there, make it look professional. People aren't going to want to hire you based on something shot in your kitchen with your Rice Krispies in the background. They want to see you looking like you're doing the job. So much like you dress for the job you want, go shoot your stuff for the job you want too. Right, Melvin?
I got lucky, Rishi, because not only did I have all of these high school stadiums, which if you ever been in the state of Texas, a high school football stadium is built like a college or small college stadium. It's that real. But I got lucky because not only did I have all that, and I had the AT&T Center, I had the Alamo Dome, but I lived on a golf course, to where if I needed to go shoot a story about PGA golf, I could go shoot my stand-up right there. I could step outside of my garage, go 20 feet, and I have the golf course as a backdrop. And no one knew the difference. So it's those little things that, like I said, going out to shoot your stand-up, don't shoot it in your mother's basement. Get creative. I used, when we were doing our studio shoot, I used my television set as a monitor, and I had a graphic on that monitor. I made something up to where I had a graphic and I was shooting a stand-up right there as though I was doing it in the studio. So get creative. Like that. You can still shoot everything indoors in your house, but get creative in how you want to do it. Use the green screen function right here on Zoom. That helps. Just certain things that you could do to make yourself stand out on your tapes that makes news directors across the country like, oh, okay, that person knows how to do this and do this properly. Have a personality. And have a personality, definitely gonna take you far.
I'll let you in on a little secret in case you don't know. I'm using the green screen feature on Zoom right now. And no, I'm not in the studio. I don't go to the studio every time I'm recording this. Now you can probably see my chair in the background. But we're talking to Melvin Jones of Vype Media in San Antonio. Before we get into your current job, I do want to have one last question, Full Sail related. What was it like going through the program with that first group that you mentioned, the 6 of you who did make it?
It was fun, man, because we became close, and still to this day I have a group text right now with myself, Richard Tiemann, and Michael Hart, that almost every anniversary that we do, we'll just reach out to each other, just says happy anniversary. Every June 26th of every year, that's what we do. Last year we got together on Zoom just to catch up, and so as the classes shrink, because it's not going to be people that stays in the program. As much as we would love for everyone to stay in the program, people are just going to drop out. That's reality. But those people who stays in the program with you are going to be lifelong friends. And so, man, it got, I wouldn't say weird, but when you see the class size shrink from 16 to 10 to then 6, and then we added one more. We added Jared towards the end because I believe he was stuck in New York, so he had to join in our class. But you know, for the 6 of us that went through this entire program together, man, I wouldn't trade that for anything, because those are my brothers right now. And the 6 of us, we went through the damnedest times, and excuse my French, but we went through the hardest times in this program, dealing with COVID, doing everything on our own. And then we found out that the equipment got upgraded as we're going towards the end of the program. So we was like, but well, like I said, we went through an entire broadcast boot camp, and none of you guys would let us fail at all. And that goes back to not only the faculty, but our determination to want to get through the program and say, hey, we were the first ones to do it. And we want to set that standard, and to telling everyone who's want to go through the program, if we can do it, you can do it too.
You did set that standard. Your examples are still used, Melvin, and here we are, which leads us to right now. You waited 4 decades for it, Melvin. Now you're doing it. What's it like to be living the dream?
Man, it's still surreal to me that I get to do this for a living. And every Friday night is different. But every Friday night during high school football here in the state of Texas, there is nothing better than it. Not this past Friday, but the Friday before, I went to go cover a team because my normal team was on a bye, was on the late, but no, they were on the road, but we didn't cover them. So I went to go cover a team called a game who used a slot T formation. And a slot T is this century's version of the triple option. That was the fastest high school football game I've ever called in my life, because it was nothing but running. It was like a track meet, and that game went by so fast, man. But you get to see certain schools and the atmosphere and homecomings and these small towns here in the state of Texas. They appreciate high school football more than any other state that I've ever been through in my life. So it's an event. It's an event, and I take Dripping Springs baseball because that's the one team that I'm 100% exclusive with. I started doing them 2021, so I'm coming on my 3rd season. And when you find yourself a community like that wraps their arms around you and love everything you do for the school, it makes it so much more better. So between baseball, I'm about to get into basketball within a month. We got volleyball playoffs starting here in the state of Texas. Football playoffs is about to start. It is a busy, busy time, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because my goal, and I told you guys this, I did not want to go back into television news doing sports. Doing play-by-play is exactly what I wanted to do. So for anyone out there, you're getting close to graduation, find your niche. If it's going into news and doing sports, do that. If it's producing, absolutely do that. There's plenty of opportunities to be a producer around the country. But if you want to do play-by-play, absolutely jump into it, man, because it is the greatest feeling in the world. And the adrenaline gets rushing so much at 6:45 when there's a 7 o'clock kickoff, and I'm about to start my pregame and everything is scripted. I'm ready to go. Your adrenaline just goes into 100 miles per hour, and it's the best feeling in the world, man. I would not change it for anything.
First and goal. Lewis gonna take it himself. Tyler Lewis, touchdown Lions. Tyler Lewis gets the Lions within 2. It is 29-27 with 3:25 to go.
I'm going to give you a chance to show us your skills of painting a picture. I'm not going to have you do a play-by-play here, but the picture I want you to paint for us is Texas high school football. We always hear it's different, it's bigger, it's, the biggest deal you're going to find in football anywhere at any level. Paint us a picture for what it's like on game day out at one of these stadiums.
The best example that I could bring to you is the school that I call every week had homecoming 2 weeks ago. Their homecoming is different. There's a private school, they're a Christian school, so they don't do traditional homecoming festivities, but it was a tailgate festivity that I don't think I've ever seen in a high school environment. And this is within San Antonio. They were tailgating. There were alumni that was out there. The stadium was 100% sold out. And it was, you have homecoming moms out, and you have parents out wearing their child's jerseys. The stadium was sold out. It's one of those type environments where you get easily 6,000 to 15,000 people coming out for a high school football game. Growing up in Vegas, we didn't have that. High school football was just high school football. You'll see maybe good 500 people come out every week for a high school football game, unless it's a big rival game. But this is every week here in the state of Texas. You have down the street from where I live right now, we have an independent school district where they have 2 stadiums where every team plays at those 2 stadiums. And every Friday night, those 2 stadiums are packed to the max because there are people from both schools on both sides of the stadium selling it out. So when you hear the term high school football is different in the state of Texas than anywhere else, it is 100% legit. And I've never seen an atmosphere like that, but it's real. And it is University of Texas football, maybe the only thing to supersede it, and it's by not that much.
Wow.
High school football takes more precedence here than the Cowboys and the Texans.
Wow. Unreal.
So it is a religion out here. Town shut down on Friday nights because of high school football. And I didn't realize that. My children go to a high school. My daughter, my third oldest, she's in the high school now. She's a senior, and it's in a small town. But Friday nights, the entire town comes out for high school football. So that tells you that high school football is king here. That's only superseded by maybe University of Texas football, maybe.
I think that something I'm curious about with you, and I do have some experience with this myself, Melvin. I will preface this question with that, but it's more difficult to prepare for calling high school action because it's not like you're going to Texas, Texas Longhorns football, and they got a whole media guide, right? There's not necessarily a website that's got listed bios and everything this kid's done since he's been born. So how do you get good information to prepare for these high school sports?
Luckily for me, our network broadcasts so many games that I'm able to go back and watch broadcasts of the team that I'm not covering that's coming in.
Wow, that's great.
But outside of that, sometimes it is like pulling teeth trying to get any information from the athletic department, from a head coach of a football team. Sometimes it is that difficult. And if you go on Max Preps, the rosters sometimes aren't the rosters.
Been
or
there.
and they have duplicate numbers. There's no media guides. There is absolutely nothing. So 98% of the time, after this, and this is after I've watched even footage, I would have hand on the opposing roster when I get to the stadium.
Man.
And that's like 2.5, 3 hours before kickoff.
Mm.
So high school football is difficult because you can't make a proper spotting chart during high school football. You have to rely on just continuing to look down at the rosters to see who carried it. Now, for me, luckily this year, it's the same teams that I did last season. So I was familiar with a lot of the players. But you don't get that everywhere because some of the coaches are reluctant. Some of the coaches believe that you're going to go back and tell your coach their plays or whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of reluctancy. And that's in all sports out here. That's in basketball and particularly baseball as well.
And Nico is thinking extra bases. Nico is going to third. Coach Payne is telling him to go. Here comes Nico. Is Nico going to get home? Nico is safe. Inside the park. Home run for Nico Ruedas. And the Tigers take the lead.
Like I've had to fight tooth and nail trying to get information for a baseball team. So it's super competitive.
And it's too bad that you get these coaches that treat it like they're Bill Belichick, right? And
right.
I get it that you're trying to make sure no team has a competitive advantage over you, but at the same time, this is high school, nobody, I'm sure there are people who bet on high school games, don't get me wrong, but it's a different level of competition. And, I think your goal is just to make people enjoy it and give the kids a chance to shine in what they're doing there.
Yes.
What's the most rewarding part of the job for you?
Getting feedback from parents or grandparents who's not even here in San Antonio or not even the state of Texas to say, we love when you're on the air. We love your call. 2 years ago, when my team in baseball, when they went deep into the state finals, they went to the regional finals, it was grandparents that came down from Seattle, from Buffalo, that on the field, as I'm doing my post game, was coming up and asking if they could take pictures with me because they were so happy just to be around me. And to me, that's the most rewarding thing is when people love your call, nothing else beats it. Nothing else beats it. And when people could come up and say, hey, oh my God, it's you. Man, that to me, that was the best feeling in the world, man. And still to this day, that when you can find something like that, that makes everything worthwhile.
Melvin Jones, play-by-play man for Vype Media, does a ton of high school games in Texas. He also produces some of the games, sometimes for himself, sometimes for others. Can you take us through what the role is for both the play-by-play broadcaster and the producer in terms of getting ready for these games, Melvin?
Well, obviously for me, as far as play-by-play goes, is what we do is we paint the picture and we give the call on what's going on the field. As far as me producing, I get everything ready the day before, whether it's graphics, whether it's certain aspects, audio, because we have a one camera shoot that we do for every game. So I do every game that I call. I make it as though it is a radio broadcast with one camera. So I get all my elements together, whether it's spots, getting all my spots ready. If I have interviews with the coaches, get that ready in my queue for the next day. So when I'm ready to fire those off at any point. So I'm very in depth with my broadcast with as far as producing as I am with play-by-play. Like I take everything so hardly, so to the heart. And like I said, it is, especially with the one camera shoots where you don't have multiple cameras, you have to make it like a radio broadcast. So I will go to break at the end of each quarter. I have PSAs that I play. If I don't have the sponsor spots, then I'll play a couple of PSAs, come back. I have bumper music prepared for when I come back on air. So I get all my production elements done either the night before or 2 nights before I actually go on air. I finish my prep, honestly, 30 minutes before I leave my house. Because even when I start my prep that Saturday or the Sunday before, it takes a while for me to get through game film and to at least figure out who's who in regards to what I'm calling football. Baseball is just different because it's 2-3 times a week. So
Yeah,
that's a different prep. But as far as football, it is that prep is different, especially when you're doing both producing and calling the game.
I'm curious because we talked about this a few days ago, and I know you didn't end up doing the broadcast because it kind of fell through, but you were going to prepare to do water polo, and that made me think about identifying players. And how do you prepare for calling action of the game when it's not easy to identify the players, whether they're water polo guys who don't have jerseys on, or maybe a team that's got uniform numbers you can barely see?
I have a pair of binoculars that I use that I bring with me on every broadcast, because now that doesn't mean I'm going to use them on every play, but I'll bring them to with me just in case we have those jersey numbers. Like some schools will have a whiteout, to where their jerseys are all white and the jersey numbers are like a pastel gray or something like that, to where it is unreadable. So I have a pair of binoculars that I carry with me almost every broadcast for that nature. Even for the water polo, I was ready because I know that they have their numbers on their swim caps. So I could have identified them then. But that's my key. I don't know how anyone else does it, but I have a pair of binoculars for that reason, because yes, it is difficult sometimes, especially if it's a whiteout. Those numbers are difficult and you just can't recognize the players. I'll give you another story. I've been producing some field hockey, but I can't do the call because I'm field level. It is difficult trying to do any game field level because you can't see the action like you will be up top. So that's another sometimes caveat you run into, is that depending on the school, these schools may have you somewhere there where it's going to be difficult for you to call the game. So certain things like that you got to watch out for.
Binoculars, the ultimate pro tip from Melvin Jones. Yes, that's something that many broadcasters at the highest levels use, because that is just critical sometimes. Good advice there. I do want to ask about your other job too. So Melvin basically works 2 full-time jobs, as unreal as that is to realize how great the work is that this guy's doing on multiple levels. He also has worked since 2016 for the Department of Defense as an audiovisual production specialist and videographer. Can you share more about what goes into that?
My everyday job with the Department of the Army is pretty much what I've been doing my entire life, and that's working in television production. Right now, I am the lead technical director for my shop, so I am behind the switcher on every little shoot I can't say little shoot, but every big shoot that we may have, as far as ceremonies or anything, a live event that we have. I'm probably behind the switcher. I'm also directing a good chunk of those as well. So I'm calling the shots and punching the buttons. I haven't shot a whole lot lately because I've been dealing with more of the directing and TD live aspect. But I still shoot every now and then. But as far as me shooting every day, I don't shoot every day anymore. Primarily because it's younger guys out there that could do it, and they can run and gun with those with the big ENG cameras now. So
come on, Melvin. We're young, man. You and I are the same age. We're young as anybody. All right. We may have watched sports before we went to widescreen television, but we still got it. All right.
That is true, man. But look, I made the joke and I told my boss this. I was like, yo, I have been running and gunning with an ENG camera since I was 16 years old.
Wow.
It's dudes in here that are older than both you and I who hasn't done it for more than 18 months. I was like, they can do it now.
That's right. That's right, man.
So, I mean, 25 years doing television production, a little over 25 years, and 19 years on a professional aspect. Man, it's been a wild roller coaster. I feel as though I have lived 4 lives at this point. But where I am right now professionally in life with calling games, still doing what I'm doing with the Department of the Army, man, I couldn't ask for anything better. And I tell people this, who's going through the program, when I say find your niche, doing play-by-play, and Rishi, you could testify this, it is difficult to do play-by-play and turn around, jump back into the studio immediately after that. That takes a special person to do both, because being a play-by-play, no matter what people tell you, financially, if you're not doing calling Major League Baseball, then it's hard, or the NBA, it's hard to make 6-7 figures. We got it, but it is a full-time job being a play-by-play announcer, and it is a lot of work, to say the least.
Melvin, I got a buddy who works for the Milwaukee Brewers now, and he's talking about what am I going to be doing in the off season when I'm not doing a Brewers game. So it doesn't ever end. There's always work to be done there.
It's always work to be done. And for me, like I said, my off season is between mid-June and mid-August. And then it all picks back up. So I got 2 months off the entire year. And at that point, I don't know what I'm doing with myself at that point. I'd say, well, I can start a podcast, but then if I start the podcast, then when sports begin, then I'm going to stop the podcast. So it's kind of hard.
Totally get it. Well, that leads us to our next big question, our final big question, which is, hey, you are living the dream. You said all you ever wanted to do is be a play-by-play guy. You're doing it. But what are your future dreams within the business in terms of kind of growth from there?
If I had it my way, I will call the NBA or NFL on the radio. Like, I feel as though, and I listen to both mediums, and for me, as a play-by-play guy, that's the way to go. I know financially, television is more lucrative, but calling NFL or calling NBA on the radio, man, I would love every bit of that.
And how do you feel what you're doing right now is preparing you for what could be if you do take that kind of a leap?
Well, consider from, like I said, I make every call that I do as though it's a radio call anyway. It's a one camera shoot. I feel as though I'm continually here in my 3rd season now with Vype. I'm getting my reps. I'm getting a lot of reps calling it as though it's on the radio. So for me, it's making it as though, if that opportunity comes, then the transition won't be as daunting as it could be, because I'm getting the reps calling stuff on the radio right now.
Melvin Jones, Vype Media, Vype Live, play-by-play man and producer. Melvin, we like to end with what we call a dream sequence. 3 quick questions, which are kind of stream of consciousness answer. You got to answer quick. I'm going to start with one about championships. We see that Eagles banner in the background. Don't think right. I'm not going to pass on that with the undefeated season going right now. Dream championship parade scene. So if you were going to have a championship parade, how would you like to have that scene to be celebrated for the Eagles?
I'm not from Philadelphia, but of course, 2018, it happened, and I got to saw the parade go down. So I would like to be there on Broad Street as the Eagles celebrate another Super Bowl, hopefully this coming February. Outside of that, I would love to be able to be on the Las Vegas Strip for the Golden Knights carrying the Stanley Cup. Now, miss the Aces. As great as the Aces victory was, I wasn't on the Strip for that, so I missed that. But I would love to be on the Strip for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, how do you beat the Strip, right? How do you beat the Strip celebration? That's fantastic. I love that.
Exactly.
I've been to the boat parades here in Tampa, but the Strip celebration, that's as good as it gets. All right, I like that. All right, dream play-by-play mentor. You can get anybody who's done play-by-play before to be your mentor to help guide you to the next big NBA gig you were talking about. Who you going with?
If it's NBA, then I'm going with Marv Albert. If it's boxing, then Jim Lampley.
Excellent. 2 of the best ever to do it. All right, final one. This one's kind of weird, but we'll throw it out there anyway. Dream, if you could get a, San Antonio down in the Riverwalk, they got a little ice cream stand there and they're going to make a flavor based on you. Like you can pick the flavor with your name on it. What's the Melvin Jones ice cream flavor?
Rainbow sherbet, believe it or not. Rainbow sherbet has always been my favorite, and I absolutely love it. And that's the flavor I will go with.
Good one. That gets a little bit of everything, right? Because it's a rainbow.
Exactly.
Okay. Finally, what advice do you have for young broadcasters and maybe specifically play-by-play broadcasters who want to work in this business?
Preparation is always the key. If you prepare, you're going to have a solid broadcast. But understand, if you're going to do play-by-play, and if you want this, it is a lot of dedication doing play-by-play. It is a lot of work, but it's so rewarding. So I recommend anyone that wants to put on that headset for the first time, start calling action, you wouldn't want to go back. And I believe calling games is the epitome of our business. And that's what, a good chunk of folks want to do is call games, man. And for me to be able to do it now, I didn't get it before, but I got it now. And I wouldn't trade this in for anything. I'm a play-by-play announcer. And I know that. I know there's a lot of people that like studio work, and that's fine. But for me, play-by-play is the epitome of what we do. And I love every bit of it.
You can't have highlights if you don't have games, right, Melvin?
That's right.
Let's start somewhere. And those calls, I love when those calls are featured in the highlight shows, in the Sportscast. So, hey, he is a member of our first online graduating class. He is our first sports trivia champion, certainly a pioneer of the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. I want to thank Melvin Jones for being with us today, doing fine work for Vype Media in San Antonio, Texas. We'll be back with another episode of the Livin The Dream podcast soon. Number 16, Sweet 16, coming up next. As for the rest of you, I hope you all keep on living the dream.